Gameplay outline. Pokemon Pearl is an RPG in which you take the role of a Pokemon trainer. A trainer captures creatures called Pokemon and trains them for use in battles against other trainers. Your goal is to become the Pokemon champion by defeating all 8 gym leaders, the Elite 4 trainers, and then the champion. The battle system has you carrying 6 Pokemon at a time in fighting in turn-based battles. Each Pokemon has up to 4 moves to choose from, each with an element. For example, fire and water, and an attack style, which can be physical or special. Each Pokemon is a type itself, which gives it strengths and weaknesses against other types of moves, such as fire being weak against water. Dedication meter. Pokemon Pearl as an RPG is quite light. You don't need to do much level grinding or get into really advanced techniques to enjoy the game for what it is. However, a lack of tutorial and some sense of direction can make it less accessible than it should be. Overall, you can play it off and on and in short sessions, so you don't have to dedicate yourself to it much. 30%. Presentation. Pokemon Pearl looks like Pokemon. It has colorful sprite-based visuals with a top-down view of the overworld. Pearl adds some subtle 3D in the overworld with nice effect. The battle visuals remain the same, with you viewing the battle from behind your own Pokemon, while your opponent is on top of the screen, apparently standing on some weird floating platform. The backgrounds are ugly smears of colors, and the battle effects are dated, and they haven't even improved on the Pokemon simply blinking when they're struck. Where Pearl really has problems is in the organizational aspect of the presentation. Your battle hinges on the strengths and weaknesses of the different types, but the game gives you no chart for what types of each of the 17 different Pokemon are strong and weak against, not even in the instruction manual. You know what does give you a type chart? The Pokemon Blue instruction manual. Another issue are the towns, which are poorly laid out and annoying to maneuver through. Among the mess of useless NPCs in the various cities, there are important characters that do not stand out, such as the Move Deleter, who allows you to delete moves that you normally cannot. This is important as these Pokemon, as previously stated, can only know 4 moves at a time. The Move Deleter is an unmarked house that looks just like every other house. But the biggest issue is just how slow everything is. Just to enter a battle, you have to hear the battle music. Pause, followed by an animation. Pause. Then some text. Pause. Then the trainer scrolls across. Pause. The trainer throws a Pokeball and the Pokemon appears. Random annoying soundbite from 1980. Pause. You throw your Pokeball and hear your annoying soundbite from 1980. Oh, but the fun doesn't stop there. If you're fighting in weather conditions, or God forbid fog, prepare to smash either your DS or your cranium. Fog in Pokemon Pearl is the worst game mechanic ever conceived. It lowers the accuracy of all moves from both sides, so you both miss half the time. And to cap it off, after every single round of moves, you get to see that Pearl of Wisdom, the fog is deep, and a breathtaking animation of fog on the screen. The same general thing happens with other weather effects, such as rain. Could we not have managed with just an icon? Basically, everything has a delay. The presentation is downright harmful to the experience. 3.5. Controls. Pokemon Pearl would have been much better if the developers had just decided to exclusively use either buttons or touch control. Instead, there's a shoddy amalgamation of both. The bottom screen in the overworld has been relegated to the status of gimmick. The Pokétch occupies the bottom screen and shows various programs such as the digital clock and a pedometer. But I guess there isn't anything useful that could have been put down there, like menus, instead of having to access them via buttons. In those menus, the touch controls are mostly ignored also. When organizing your 6 Pokemon in your party, you see them on the top screen with the options of summary, switch, and item. On the bottom screen, there are 6 Pokeball icons that can correspond to each of the 6 Pokemon. Pressing one of them gives you the summary of that Pokemon, which you have to match with the top screen. This falls under the categories of useless and stupid. Your Pokédex has you jumping from screen to screen, and your item bag only lets you choose categories of items instead of the items themselves. When you're storing and withdrawing Pokemon from your PC, as you can only carry 6 Pokemon at a time, you have to use the top screen to deposit, withdraw, and sort all separately. All of this rather could have been done by dragging and dropping on the touch screen. In battle, though, you can choose between buttons or touch control. The design of the menus are not well suited for button control, though, and are seemingly optimized for touch control. This is strange because the rest of the game, that can't be said. The controls are a convoluted mess of buttons and touch controls that make the sum total less than the individual parts. 4. Variety. There are a lot of Pokemon in Pokemon Pearl, 493 to be exact, although technically some of them you can only acquire through a trade. Pearl pushes this tacky concept even further, though, as some can only be imported from Fire Red and Leaf Green and Emerald on the Game Boy Advance, and some you can only get from special events from Nintendo. To catch them all is absurd. Strangely, you really don't see very many different Pokemon. By the end, I had only seen fewer than 150, with most of those being the same few Pokemon over and over. I didn't even encounter a single wildfire Pokemon. It's also a problem that you can't train much more than 6 different Pokemon without level grinding, making catching a lot of Pokemon pretty pointless. There are tons of moves that combine for a lot of depth, and it's the biggest plus to the game. The 17 different types also add to the deaths, but just confuse matters really when trying to play single player, if only because the game doesn't aid you at all. The overworld is fairly large with a decent variety of environments. The battles get stale because of the repetition of the same Pokemon and simplicity in battle. The gyms, though, provide good challenges and solid puzzles. The puzzles get annoying, though, because you'll have to leave the gym to recover from fighting with several trainers before the gym leader, and when you leave, the puzzle resets. I completed the game in about 35 hours, but the game is artificially lengthened by incredibly slow pacing and the repetitive battles. I'll note that I raced the Elite Four in only 28 hours, and the combination of failed attempts and level grinding took the majority of the additional 7 hours. Finally, the value of the many Pokemon is hindered by the annoying concepts.
7.